The film opens at an old, dilapidated house. Here, two individuals, named Chang and Yi, arrived on assignment for their company. Their task is to scan every room in the house, as their company intends to develop a horror game based on the design of this very location. From their conversation, we learn that this site was not chosen at random. Legend has it that the house's former owner wiped out his entire family with his own hands. In fact, his wife's body has never been recovered to this day. People believe that the owner was under the influence of an evil spirit. For this very reason, the house's haunted reputation was deemed the perfect fit for the game. While scanning the rooms, the pair eventually reaches the studio of the owner's wife, the place where she used to craft clay dolls. Chang steps into the kiln room, where the dolls were baked, to inspect it. Suddenly, the door to the kiln room slams shut on its own. Yi catches a glimpse of a strange, ghostly figure lurking behind the curtains near the wall. Terrified, Yi moves forward to search for Chang. However, Chang suddenly jumps out and scares him using a clay doll, then casually asks him to hold the doll so that it, too, can be scanned for the game. Just then, a faint yet spine-chilling voice is heard, and the voice said, "Put it back." Out of sheer terror, the doll slips from Yi's grasp, and its head shatters. Inscribed on the back of the doll is a strange incantation, precisely the kind one might find written after a ritual. He attempts to flee the scene, but suddenly, a heavy iron ladder crashes down upon him, inflicting a severe injury. Chang rushes off to fetch tools to help him, and we see Yi's blood pooling on the floor. This blood slowly seeps toward the broken doll, and gradually the doll begins to turn red. It appeared almost as if the doll were coming to life. When Chang returns, Yi is no longer pinned beneath the ladder. Instead, he stands before Chang in a dazed, catatonic state. Yi. Chang tries to make a run for it, but an invisible force drags him into the kiln room. And then, the scene freezes. The scene then shifts to a couple, Su Chuan and his pregnant wife Mu Hua. Su is a developer at the very same gaming company where Yi used to work, while Mu Hua is a restoration technician specializing in restoring old buildings and statues to their original states. Both desire a financially secure future for their unborn child, so they are working tirelessly to earn as much as possible. Su is anxiously awaiting approval for his upcoming game, an achievement that would secure him a promotion and allow Mu Hua to take some much-needed rest after her pregnancy. Mu Hua reminds him that they have a doctor's appointment scheduled for 2 p.m. that day, and Su needs to meet her at the hospital. Upon arriving at the office, Su discovers that his game design has failed to receive approval, adding to the stress he is already under. Meanwhile, an employee is in a panic because she has been unable to establish contact with Yi. Su suggests that since another scene developer was with him at the time, perhaps they should try reaching out to that person instead. Just then the boss arrives and asks for the details regarding the meeting. However, Yi hasn't submitted anything yet. Su is instructed to call Yi, and, ironically, at that very moment, Yi's phone begins to ring right there in the office. A short while later, Yi himself arrives at the office. However, judging by his appearance, it is clearly evident that something has gone terribly wrong. He appears terrified and mentally unstable. Yet, the boss ignores his condition, retrieves his materials, and instructs Su to lead the meeting. During the meeting, Su recounts the dark backstory of the house to the investors. However, the investors grow frustrated, as they were expecting to see actual game footage. Suddenly, Yi rushes up to the glass wall and begins to scream hysterically. She's coming. But Su, in an effort to salvage the situation, spins this into a marketing gimmick, claiming that the game is so terrifying that it provokes such extreme reactions in people. Abruptly, Yi's body reacts violently, and he begins to vomit a foul, black liquid. He is immediately rushed to the hospital, where everyone assumes he is suffering from food poisoning. The boss successfully convinces the investors to secure the funding and, replacing Yi, assigns Su the task of overseeing this horror game project. Su hesitates initially, but eventually agrees, swayed by the promise of extra money and a promotion. Amidst this chaos, he completely forgets about his wife's doctor's appointment. That night, he apologizes to Muhua and brings home sushi and raw meat to surprise her. However, Muhua reminds him that she is pregnant and cannot consume raw meat. Even this minor oversight creates a palpable sense of silent disappointment between them. After dinner, Muhua reveals that she has turned down a major restoration project in Rome because she does not want to leave her unborn child alone. Su supports her decision, though the pressure of work is clearly still weighing heavily on his mind. Later that night, while Muhua is asleep, Su designs a small baby doll for himself, inspired, of course, by his own unborn child. Just then, their practice baby doll suddenly begins to make noise. Su removes its batteries and shuts it off. However, as the camera pans to a box sitting nearby, we catch a glimpse of that same creepy clay doll, the one Su had brought back with him from that haunted house. That doll is now sitting in Su's home, mixed in with his office supplies. In the next scene, while conducting research for his new game, Su keeps in constant contact with his wife, Muhua, via a baby monitor. This allows him to manage his office work and look after Muhua simultaneously. For the game's development, he needs to conduct in-depth research into the background of the haunted house's owner and his family history. Consequently, he begins watching old interview videos featuring the owner's wife. As the scene transitions into night, Su becomes so engrossed in his research, even while at home, that he loses all awareness of his immediate surroundings. It is at this moment that ghostly phenomena begin to manifest around him. In the adjacent room, Muhua settles down to work at her desk, and Su calls out to her, urging her not to work so late at night. But when Muhua returns from the kitchen to join him, and Su looks back toward the table, he finds that no one is there. Suddenly, the apparition of a blood-soaked woman appears right in front of Su. Jolted by this shock, Su wakes up. He literally screams as he sits upright, finding Muhua in the act of waking him. Muhua is slightly startled by Su's scream. Su calms both her and himself down. Just then, Muhua notices Su's research papers and reveals that the owner's wife was actually a student at her very own college. Given that it was such a decent family, she wonders why something so terrible would befall them. Pondering this, Muhua becomes emotional and begins to weep. Su comforts her. Amidst this emotional moment, Muhua asks Su to make a promise. The promise is this: if he ever has to choose between saving her or their unborn child, he must choose to save the child. Su promises to save them both, and then shows Muhua the baby doll he has crafted. Muhua notices that the doll has yellow hair, whereas both she and Su have black hair. Su jokingly remarks that yellow hair is a trending hairstyle, and they both share a light chuckle. However, even this light-hearted moment carried a strange underlying tension. The next scene takes place at night. A baby monitor in an empty room begins tracking an unseen presence, as if someone were actually there, though nothing is visible to us. The tracker slowly moves until it stops right outside Su and Muhua's bedroom door. Suddenly, the bedroom door bursts open with a loud bang. This wakes Muhua. She heads to the kitchen to get a glass of water, where she spots that same creepy doll lying amidst Su's belongings. Just as Muhua reaches down to pick up the doll, the baby kicks inside her womb, and her attention is diverted. After drinking some water, as she heads back toward the room, the baby monitor moves once again. This time behind Muhua, we catch a glimpse of a ghostly figure. However, it vanishes within a mere second. This time Muhua carefully picks up the doll and begins examining its broken parts. Just then, a chillingly distorted nursery rhyme begins to play from the baby monitor. Startled by this sudden sound, Muhua panics slightly, and her finger gets cut by one of the doll's broken fragments. She sets the doll down and rushes toward the room. But, as fate would have it, her blood had already stained the doll. Slowly, the doll turns completely red once again. Now the sound of that same eerie rhyme begins to emanate from the doll itself. Muhua turns around to look, and her eyes widen in sheer terror. Then, gradually, her eyes turn completely red, and at this moment, it becomes clear that the doll possesses only those individuals whose blood has come into contact with it. The next scene takes place the following morning, where Sue wakes up to find Mu Hua eating breakfast. Sue points out that, given her pregnancy, she shouldn't be consuming raw meat. He wonders why she is doing so now. Mu Hua immediately removes the meat from her plate and begins to eat hurriedly. Here, we notice that her right eye has turned a faint, bright red. And then suddenly, she vomits up all the food she has eaten, so rushes to attend to her, and in the background, near the kitchen, we catch a glimpse of a half-eaten piece of raw meat. This clearly indicates that something unnatural is indeed taking place here. The next scene takes us to an art gallery, where several art pieces created by the owner's wife are on display. Here, Sue arrives to meet the owner's wife's sister, Miss Liu, in order to obtain permission for his game project. Liu explains that her sister views her art not merely as a craft, but as a medium for conveying emotions. She believes that every living thing eventually returns to the earth, and that the earth itself holds a deep connection to human emotions. For this very reason, she would spend months on each of her art pieces, striving to capture and seal those emotions within them. Liu is consumed by an intense desire to uncover the truth behind her sister's demise. She feels that this game could serve as the perfect medium to draw public attention back to this case. Perhaps this time, the truth will finally come to light. Sue gives her his assurance that he will do everything in his power to ensure that the truth is revealed. However, he remains blissfully unaware that the situation he has stepped into is not merely a game, but is destined to transform into a living nightmare. In the following scene, we see Sue returning to the very same haunted house where the story first began. This time, he has come to conduct a detailed scan of the premises and gather reference materials for his game. He closely observes the dilapidated art pieces scattered throughout the house, as well as the surrounding environment. Yet, gradually, paranormal activities begin to manifest around him once again. He spots a shadowy, woman-like figure moving back and forth. Suddenly, the ghost of the owner's wife materializes right in front of him. She is holding that very creepy doll and repeatedly chanting a single line, "Put it back, put it back." Terrified, Sue stumbles backward and falls to the ground. Blood begins to drip from the ceiling above him, and when he looks up, a male ghost screams furiously down at him. In shock, Sue immediately rips off his 3D glasses, and it is revealed that he had merely been testing a prototype of the game all along. Sue immediately confronts his teammates, demanding to know why they had added the owner's wife's ghost to the game, especially since they had never received permission to do so. Confused, a teammate replies that she hadn't designed any female ghost at all, so how could one possibly have been added? Dismissing it as a technical glitch, Sue tries to brush it off. However, his expressions clearly betray the fact that he is deeply unsettled by the experience. Meanwhile, in a parallel storyline, we are shown a scene at a house. There, Mu Hua is working at her desk. She repeatedly lowers the air conditioner's temperature, but it keeps rising back up on its own. When Mu Hua glances at her desk, she finds that same broken doll sitting right in front of her. Terrified, she attempts to flee, but the room door slams shut on its own, and the doll seems to magically land right in her hands. The doll's eyes slowly begin to move, and a creepy, childlike voice emanates from it. What did the voice say? Well, the voice whispered, "I want blood." When Mu Hua looks into the mirror, her reflection, wearing a bizarre, eerie smile, appears to slice its own neck just below the chin. Uncontrollably, Mu Hua finds herself mimicking the exact same action. The look on her face makes it painfully clear that she has absolutely no desire to be doing this. But it was as if someone else were controlling her. Meanwhile, at the office, Sue is busy with his team working to fix a new glitch in their game. On his desk, a baby monitor displays a live feed of Mu. In the footage, she appears covered in blood, singing a lullaby to a collection of clay dolls while repairing a broken one. Mu had fallen completely under possession. After fixing the doll, she proceeds to partially erase the talisman inscribed upon it. Sue, however, remains completely oblivious to all of this. Meanwhile, a new subplot is introduced. featuring a talisman collector. He travels to various locations, constantly on the hunt for rare talismans. This time, he visits a priest who explains that talismans should be used solely for the betterment of others, just as his father used to do. The young man shows no interest in this advice. Instead, he behaves somewhat rudely. The priest reads his future and identifies a specific omen, the abyssal hexagram. This mystical symbol represents darkness, unknown powers, and deep hidden energies. Upon hearing this, expressions of tension cloud both their faces, signaling that something massive and dangerous is looming on the horizon. Anyway, returning to Sue, he calls out to Mew at home but receives no response. He notices that the doll on the table has now been perfectly repaired, while Mew is asleep on the bed. A short while later, Sue heads to bed as well and casually asks, "Did you fix the doll?" But Mew offers no reply. Just then, the air conditioner's temperature inexplicably resets to 30 degrees again. As soon as Sue adjusts the temperature back to normal, Mew suddenly wakes up with a scream and angrily snaps, "Let me sleep. Don't bother me." Saying this, she begins to violently scratch her belly. Sue watches in horror and sees that she has scratched it so hard that blood has actually started to flow. Now, of course, this was a very bizarre scene. But moving on, the story continues the next day at the office, where Sue is researching pregnancy-related mood swings. His boss calls him over and in a friendly tone mentions that he too had gone through a similar phase when his own wife was pregnant. He assures Sue that things will gradually return to normal. For good luck, the boss hands him a talisman, one that his wife had specially crafted to protect both Sue and Mua. Sue returns to his work and reviews the footage from the day when he and the scanner boy visited that haunted house. He notices that there is something written on the back of the doll, though he cannot make it out clearly. Just then, on the live feed from the baby monitor, we see Mua staring directly into the camera. At that very moment, Sue receives a call from Ai. Ai's voice was broken and absolutely trembling with fear. He manages to gasp out only one thing, that they need to summon a Taoist priest to protect them from the doll. And then, abruptly, the call cuts out. On the baby monitor screen, Mua is still staring at the camera, wearing a creepy, unsettling smile. Sue rushes immediately to Ai house, where he finds Ai in a horrific state, pleading for help. One of his eyes has been gouged out. Meanwhile, in a parallel scene, we see Mua with their practice doll, from which one eye has also been removed. As Mua manipulates the doll, Ai's body reacts in exactly the same way. I mean, much like in voodoo rituals where a puppet becomes a proxy. It was something like that. Mua breaks the doll's arm, one limb at a time, and with each break, Ai's arm snaps as well. Finally, she twists the doll's neck, and in that very instant, Ai's neck twists along with it. Before passing away, Ai manages to utter just one line. "Put the doll back." Sue witnesses this unfolding right before his eyes, yet he is powerless to intervene. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the talisman collector, who is seated in his room, occupied with the task of crafting new talismans. He is also contemplating the warning issued by the priest. He holds the belief that if he helps others with genuine sincerity, he will ultimately reap some beneficial rewards. In a parallel sequence, we witness the ambulance scene, where Ai is being transported to the hospital. There, Sue is asked to recount what Ai said during his final moments. Sue recounts the entire incident. Upon returning to the office, he extracts the doll's image from the game footage and digitally enhances it. Now, the talisman drawn on the back of the doll becomes clearly visible to him. Subsequently, Sue returns home, where Mua is fast asleep. However, near the doll resting on the table, he discovers a small additional doll-like face, an object that appears even more disturbing than the original. Just then, the sound of the doll weeping echoes through the room. When Sue investigates, he discovers that the doll has been completely shattered, and its batteries have fallen out. Yet, despite this destruction, the sound of weeping continued to emanate from the doll. Suddenly, Mua begins pounding violently on the door from the outside, only for everything to fall into absolute silence the very next instant. At that precise moment, an unseen spirit appears to detach itself from Mua. and enter directly into Su. Now on the brink of full possession, Su begins to experience a series of flashbacks. He sees visions of the doll's original owner's wife, crafting dolls out of clay, and drawing talismans on their backs. For a brief moment, Su loses control of himself. However, thanks to the protective talisman given to him by his boss, he manages to regain his composure and attempts to take possession of the doll. But Mu-Hua snatches it away from him. When Su calls out to her, she does indeed turn around to look. But by now, both her anger and her self-control have intensified. In fact, she simply takes the doll and walks away. Following this, Su visits a priest and explains the entire situation. He also shows him a photograph of the talisman inscribed on the back of the doll. This is, in fact, the very same priest, friends, who was previously seen alongside the young talisman collector. Upon examining the design of the talisman, the priest immediately realizes that this is no ordinary matter. He then refers Su to the aforementioned talisman collector, who serves as a guest lecturer on talismanic astrology at the local college. From this point forward, friends, we shall refer to him simply as the master. Su attends his class and poses a question. His question is this: does a talisman lose its power if a portion of it is removed? Master Kamini explains that the power is not completely extinguished. Rather, its potency diminishes in direct proportion to the extent of the portion that has been erased. After the class, Su requests the master's assistance, though the latter initially declines. However, the moment he takes a close look at the talisman on the doll, his demeanor undergoes a complete shift, almost as if he already possesses some deep prior knowledge regarding this specific symbol. The master finally agrees to lend his aid and reveals that this is a binding talisman, a device utilized to seal away extremely dangerous spirits, as such entities can neither be destroyed nor appeased. For this very reason, such entities are imprisoned within human-like objects, such as dolls or toys, to ensure they cannot directly harm any human being. Su asks if it is possible to complete the talisman and seal the spirit away once more. The master explains that while this is indeed possible, it is an extremely risky endeavor. The talisman will only function if every single character inscribed upon it is written with absolute accuracy and precision. And so, the plan was set in motion. The master arrives at Su's home, quickly assesses the situation, and instructs Su to bring Mu-Hua to him immediately. Su goes to check on Mu, whom he finds in her room, devouring raw meat. It was a sight that was clearly unnatural. Suddenly Mu rises and advances toward the doll, but the master is already prepared. He had previously drawn a circle of ritual salt on the floor. The moment Mu steps into this area, she is unable to remain standing for long, collapsing to the ground and writhing in agony. Su steps forward to assist her, but Mu clambers onto him, using his body as a shield to protect herself from the salt. At that moment, the master tosses 42 talismans he had prepared into the air, several of which immediately adhere to Mu-Hua's body. Using his spiritual powers, the master attempts to extract the spirit from within her. However, despite a strenuous struggle, the spirit refuses to dislodge. The sheer exertion of wielding such immense power causes blood to begin trickling from the master's nose. At this critical, the master is struck by an idea. He applies his own blood directly onto the doll. This compels the spirit to forcibly exit Mu-Hua's body, and the master immediately redirects it back into the doll. He then instantly affixes a sealing talisman upon it. Mu-Hua falls unconscious, yet the relief proves short-lived. Within moments, the talisman affixed to the doll bursts into flames, and the spirit surges back into Mu once again. By this point, the situation had become even more intense, friends. The master immediately bound a cloth, woven from talismanic material, over the spirit's eyes. Then, using his powers to temporarily suppress it, he brought Mu's body under his control. He then bound Mu's body with a red thread, serving as a protective binding. The master asked Su how the doll had ended up in his home. However, Su was on the verge of an emotional breakdown. The master then explained that blood-drinking demons cannot be sealed away so easily. Mu had only 7 days left, and according to Su, He had brought the doll home 6 days ago. This meant that now only 1 day remained. It also became clear at this juncture that, for some reason, the spirit did not want to let go of Mu. Su revealed that Mu had merely repaired the doll. Upon hearing this, the master began to suspect that the spirit might have deliberately chosen someone capable of understanding talismans. Who could have possibly created such a powerful talisman? This line of inquiry led him to the owner's wife. The master and Su immediately went to the owner's wife's sister, Miss Lu, and convinced her to participate in a ritual. Through this, she would be able to witness the truth of her sister's past with her own eyes. And so, the ritual began. Using his powers, the master guided Miss Lu into the memories stored within her sister's body. Su was tasked with beating a drum in a steady, rhythmic beat, while the master warned Lu that the moment he pulled on the red thread, she had to return immediately. Otherwise, she risked becoming trapped within that memory forever. Inside the ritualistic vision, Liu watched her sister digging up soil in a graveyard. As she was returning home with the soil, she suffered a miscarriage, meaning her unborn child perished right there. This trauma shattered her completely. Drowning in pain and grief, she mixed the remains of her lost child with soil to fashion a doll. And the moment the doll was complete, she, in a possessed state, killed her husband with a knife, and subsequently wiped out the entire family as well. In other words, a major truth has been revealed here, friends. It wasn't the homeowner who destroyed the family, but rather his wife. So yes, upon realizing the reality of the situation, the owner's wife painted a talisman onto the doll in order to seal the spirit within it. Then, to keep the doll hidden away from the world, she sealed herself behind a brick wall inside the fire room and set it ablaze. That is why her body was never recovered. Following all these revelations, Master pulls Liu back into the real world and pieces the entire puzzle together. Essentially, the soil from the graveyard was already saturated with negative energy. When the child's blood was mixed into it, multiple evil spirits claimed the doll as their home. It was these very spirits that were controlling her. So yes, the solution is now clear as well. To break this cycle, they must locate the body of the homeowner's wife. Master immediately takes Su Muhua into the car, and they set off. On the way, Master explains that a mere talisman is not sufficient to seal spirits of this nature. Rather, a human body is also required, as it serves as a powerful vessel. If they fail to find Liu's sister's body, this spirit will continue to feed upon Muhua's body until it has established complete control over her. Su, panicked, asks if there is any other way should they fail to find the body. The master pauses for a moment before replying that a way does exist, but Su certainly won't like it. Upon reaching the house, the master immediately stops Su from entering, instructing him to stay in the car and keep a close watch on Mu. As a safety precaution, the master even hands his talisman locket to Su, revealing that he himself is currently searching for the source of this binding talisman. However, assessing the situation, Su devises a clever plan. Since his company has already conducted a full scan of the house for the game, the master can search for the actual body within the real-world house. Meanwhile, Su can enter the virtual game environment to locate the broken parts of the doll and the missing characters of the talisman. This means both of them can begin working simultaneously, each in their own respective domain. And so, the master proceeds through the house, evading dangerous spirits and other supernatural threats, until he finally reaches the fire room, where he successfully locates the body of Liu's sister. However, it is sealed behind a brick wall. The master begins to break down the wall. Meanwhile, in the glitchy environment of the game, Su encounters the spirit of Liu's sister, who assists him in finding the broken parts of the doll, all the while repeatedly urging him to put the doll back. Su successfully finds the missing characters of the talisman and begins noting them down in his diary. In the meantime, we witness a strange transformation in Mu's eyes, as if multiple eyes were awakening within them. Before the phenomenon suddenly vanishes, Su immediately rushes to inform the master that Mu has gone missing. By that time, the master had already broken through the wall and retrieved the body's head. However, at that very moment, the door to the fire room slams shut and the room bursts into flames. And of course, the master was now trapped inside. Su attempts to open the door, but just then, Mu attacks him. The master shouts, urging them to use the talisman locket. The moment Su activates the locket, Mu Hua begins to writhe in agony. Seizing this distraction, the master manages to escape the fire-engulfed room. For a brief moment, Mu Hua returns to a normal state. Su hands the master the missing characters for the talisman, the very ones he had retrieved from the game, and then rushes to attend to Mu Hua. By now, Mu Hua has become extremely weak. To bolster her spirits, Su shows her a handmade doll he had crafted. This time, he has given it black hair. Meanwhile, the master successfully completes the talisman and attempts to extract the spirits from within Mu Hua, intending to transfer them into the severed head of Leo's sister. However, the instant he attempts this, the head shatters, and all the malevolent spirits disperse throughout the room, in the form of a dark cloud. At that very moment, the baby in Mu Hua's womb begins to move violently and unnaturally, as if struggling to break free. The master immediately realizes that the spirits are not targeting Mu Hua, but rather her unborn child, for the spirits seek to be reborn. Indeed, friends, the situation has now turned critical. The master explains that to stop them, the spirits must be sealed away, using the child as the vessel, an act that would in essence mean sacrificing the baby. Mu is utterly devastated and pleads with Su to save their child. Su desperately wants to save both his wife and his baby, but the master issues a stern warning. If a decision is not made immediately, neither will survive. In that critical instant, Su recalls the master's earlier words, that a human body is required to seal away the spirits. What happened next? Without wasting a single moment, Su slices his own hand and lets his blood drip onto the doll. The instant he does so, all the malevolent spirits surge into him. Su then urges the master, quickly, use the talisman. But before that could happen, he falls completely under the control of the spirits. He knocks the master aside, advances toward Mu, and by now, even one of his eyes has turned blood red. Just as he is about to strike Mu, Su summons his last reserves of willpower and tears out his own red icon. In a desperate bid to break free from the spirit's control, he instructs the master to complete the talisman immediately. Using his own blood, the master draws the very same binding talisman, identical to the one etched on the dolls, onto Su's back. The moment the talisman is completed, Su's life comes to an end. However, all the spirits within him are permanently sealed away. In his final moments, Su tells Mu that their daughter will live a healthy and happy life, and then he passes away. Simultaneously, the clay dolls kept nearby revert to their normal colors, as if all the darkness has finally been dispelled. The scene cuts here. The next scene takes place 6 months later, where Mu Hua is telling a story to her newborn daughter when she receives a delivery from Su's office. Inside is a special digital system containing a virtual avatar of Su, one designed to age naturally over time, allowing Mu Hua to see him whenever she wishes. In a deeply emotional moment, Mu Hua speaks to Su, telling him that their daughter is now 6 months old, she is healthy, and they both miss him dearly. The scene then shifts to the master, who places the binding talisman into his collection. There are still some empty spaces on the shelves, accompanied by labels such as stealing soul, borrowing life, and resurrection. All of this hints that his journey is far from over. Finally, we see Lu, who has put the evil doll on display in an art gallery. However, her behavior no longer seems normal. She looks as though she is plotting a way to bring her sister back. Now in the film's final scene, we see Su lying unconscious in a hospital bed. This leaves it completely unclear whether he is alive or not. He might be in a coma, and with this very mystery, the film comes to an end. So friends, that was the story of the film Mudbound. Now, let's discuss some interesting theories surrounding it. At the end of the movie, it is clearly shown that the master is still missing a few talismans. This isn't just a random detail. it hints that the master is collecting these talismans for a larger purpose. Perhaps he intends to perform an ultimate ritual or create a balance that would allow him to control various supernatural forces. However, the film intentionally leaves this matter open to interpretation. On the other hand, Lu's behavior becomes quite suspicious toward the end. She doesn't merely put the evil doll on display, rather, she appears to be protecting it, almost as if she harbors a hidden motive. There is a strong possibility that Lu has secretly hidden Su away, given that those powerful evil spirits remain sealed inside Su. If Lu were to gain control over these spirits, she might be able to attempt to bring her sister back. The scariest part of all is that Moore might not even realize that Su could actually still be alive. Overall, this theory strongly suggests that the story is not yet over, making a part 2 seem almost inevitable.